What would you do if you found an old book in which 28 children were listed without names, and all the birth certificates bore the same signature? In the time-yellowed pages of the Shevchenko family book from Kharkiv, dating back to the late 19th century, lies a mystery that no one has dared to investigate for more than 120 years. The air of the old archive is thick with the scent of dust and secrets, and between the lines of ancient records lies a story that chills the blood. This is a story of how an ordinary discovery in the forgotten basement of an old library led to the uncovering of dark secrets of an entire city. Before we begin this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other documentary investigations like this one. Anna Sokolova had been working as an archivist at the Kharkiv Regional Library for 15 years. Usually her days passed quietly among endless rows of bookshelves and card files. She was used to the smell of old paper and the quiet rustle of pages. But on that January morning in 2023, everything changed. Repair work in the basement of the library revealed a walled-up room, the existence of which no one had known about for decades. When Anna descended the narrow staircase after the workers, she was met by the musty air of a long-closed room. The beam of her flashlight snatched the outline of a massive wooden cabinet from the darkness. Its doors were tied with a faded but still strong rope, sealed with a wax seal with an illegible imprint. Next to the seal, on the dusty surface, was an inscription made with faded ink. "Do not open. By order of the Kharkiv governor, 1797. "It's strange that this cabinet is officially sealed," whispered Anna, cautiously touching the cold surface of the wood. In the dim light, it seemed to her that the wood of the cabinet was slightly vibrating under her fingers, but she attributed this sensation to her excitement. According to archival protocols, any find older than 100 years must be documented and handed over to specialists for assessment of its historical value. After long negotiations with the library administration and obtaining permission from the Department of Cultural Heritage, the cabinet was officially opened in the presence of a commission. Inside, dozens of books, documents, and folders were discovered. But Anna's attention was immediately drawn to a massive leather-bound book with a coat of arms embossed on the cover and the inscription "Book of the Shevchenko family, Kharkiv." "This is a metrical book," Anna explained to the members of the commission. "These recorded births, marriages, and deaths, but it's strange that it's dedicated to only one family. Usually, metrical books were kept for church parishes, not for individual families." When Anna carefully opened the heavy cover, a cloud of dust rose into the air, and for a moment it seemed to her that she heard a quiet child's cry coming from the book. She looked around at her colleagues, but no one seemed to have heard anything. The first pages contained ordinary records of marriages and births in families with the surname Shevchenko living in Kharkiv and its environs. But from January 1893, the records began to change. Anna turned a yellowed page and froze. The entry dated January 15th, 1893, read, "A male infant was born to the family of Shevchenko, Ivan Petrovich, and Shevchenko, Maria Andreevna. Name not given." The priest's signature was blurred, but discernible, Father Grigory Vosnetsev. On the next page, another entry, dated February 23rd of the same year. "A female infant was born to the family of Shevchenko, Nikolai Ivanovich, and Shevchenko, Ekaterina Stepanovna. Name not given," and again the same signature. "This is unusual," Anna murmured. In those days, children were always named at baptism, which was performed shortly after birth. Nameless entries are practically never found in metrical books. She continued to leaf through the pages. All the birth records for 1893, 94, 95, and part of 96 contained the same strangeness. 28 children born into different Shevchenko families were left without names, and all bore the signature of Father Grigory Vosnetsev. Even more strange was the fact that records of the deaths of these children were absent, as if after birth they simply disappeared from official documents. Anna knew that in those days infant mortality was high, and the absence of death records in such a large sample was statistically impossible. On the last page of the book was glued a yellowed photograph. It depicted a priest in vestments standing in front of a group of women holding infants wrapped in identical white swaddling clothes. The faces of the women were blurred, as if by movement during the photographing. Only the face of the priest was clear, discernible, gaunt, with deep-set eyes and thin lips, compressed in a barely perceptible smile. On the back of the photograph was the inscription "Blessing of Newborn Families." Shevchenko, Kharkiv, June 12, 1896. "I have to investigate this," Anna told her boss after the commission had completed the initial inventory of the finds. "Something is not right here. 28 children without names, all with the same surname, all recorded by the same priest, and not a single record of baptism or death." After much persuasion, Anna was allowed to investigate this mystery. She began by searching for information about Father Grigory Vosnetsov. The archives of the Kharkiv diocese contain scant information. Grigory Vosnetsov arrived in Kharkiv from St. Petersburg in 1892 and was appointed to the parish of the Holy Protection Church. However, as early as December 1896, his name disappears from church records without any explanation. In the city archive, Anna discovered another oddity. In the period from 1893 to 1896, an unusually large number of families with the surname Shevchenko lived in Kharkiv. According to the 1897 census, their number decreased sharply. Many families left the city within 1 year without indicating reasons or a new place of residence. Further searches led Anna to the private archives of the Kharkiv newspaper, Southern Edge, published at the end of the 19th century. In the issue of October 20th, 1896, she found a small note. "Strange rumors are spreading among the residents of the Podol district. Several mothers claim to hear children crying at night coming from the basement of the Holy Protection Church, although it is known that there are no children there. The priest of the parish, Father Grigory, denies these rumors and calls them old wives' tales." What was even more intriguing, in the issue of December 15th of the same year, another short note was published. "Yesterday night, a fire broke out in the Holy Protection Church. Thanks to the quick actions of the fire brigade, the fire was extinguished without causing significant damage to the building. However, the basement of the church where, according to the priest, the church archives were stored was completely burned down. According to preliminary data, the cause of the fire was an unextinguished candle. The priest of the parish, Father Grigory Vosnetsov, left the city for unknown reasons on the eve of the incident." These newspaper notes prompted Anna to investigate more deeply. She decided to contact the descendants of the Shevchenko families, if any still lived in Kharkiv. After several weeks of searching through genealogical databases and social networks, she found Maria Shevchenko, a 72-year-old woman whose ancestors lived in Kharkiv at the end of the 19th century. Maria's house was located on the outskirts of Kharkiv, an old but well-maintained wooden house with carved window frames and a small garden. When Anna knocked on the door, she had to wait a long time before slow footsteps were heard. The door was opened by a gray-haired woman with penetrating, dark eyes that seemed to look right through Anna. "You've come to ask about the book," Maria said instead of greeting her. It was not a question, but a statement that sent a chill down Anna's spine. "How do you know?" Anna asked, surprised that the elderly woman had somehow guessed the purpose of her visit. "I've been waiting for someone like you all my life," Maria replied, gesturing for Anna to enter. "My grandmother said that one day someone would come asking about the children without names, and that when that happened, I should tell the whole truth." Inside, the house was filled with antique items, furniture from the early 20th century, darkened by time, framed photographs, an ancient sideboard with a collection of porcelain figurines. But most of all, Anna's attention was drawn to an icon in the corner of the room. It depicted not a saint, but the same priest from the photograph, Father Grigory Vosnetsov. "That's not an icon," Maria remarked, following Anna's gaze. "It's a warning. My grandmother made an artist paint his face so that we would never forget what evil looks like." Maria pointed Anna to a chair and sat down opposite her. Her hands, covered in age spots, trembled slightly as she began her story. "My grandmother, Olga Shevchenko, was one of those mothers. She gave birth to a daughter in 1895, and Father Grigory recorded the child without a name. Grandmother said that he convinced all the mothers from the Shevchenko families that a name gives a child a destiny, and that if you leave the child nameless in the church book, evil spirits will not be able to find their soul. He promised that he would perform a special rite that would protect the children from all diseases and misfortunes. Maria fell silent and looked out the window, as if seeing something from the past there. But in reality, he was collecting these children for something else. Grandmother said that Father Grigory held a strange ritual in the basement of the church every month. All the mothers with infants were gathered there, under the guise of a special blessing. They had to leave the children alone with him for the whole night. In the morning, the children were returned to their mothers, but each time, after these blessings, the infants became quieter and paler. Anna listened breathlessly. The story sounded incredible, but it explained the strange entries in the metrical book. In September 1896, Maria continued, "Something happened that made my ancestors flee Kharkiv. Grandmother never said directly what happened that night, but she mentioned the night of empty cradles, when all the mothers woke up and found their children missing. They rushed to the church, but Father Grigory had also disappeared. After a few hours, the children were found in the basement of the church, all alive, but lying in a circle of strange symbols drawn on the floor, with something that looked like dried blood. Maria stood up and walked over to an old dresser. From the bottom drawer, she took out a tattered notebook in a leather binding. This is my grandmother's diary. She started keeping it after those events. Everything she remembered and what she was able to find out about what was really happening is here." Anna carefully took the diary. The pages were fragile, the handwriting small and nervous. In places, the ink had blurred, as if tears had dripped onto the page. "I've never shown this to anyone," Maria said quietly. "Grandmother made me promise to keep the diary a secret until someone comes who starts asking the right questions." Returning home, Anna spent the whole night reading Olga Shevchenko's diary. What she learned made her blood run cold. According to the records, Father Grigory Vasnetsev was no ordinary priest. Olga wrote that he belonged to a secret society that practiced an ancient ritual known as soul gathering. They believed that if they collected a certain number of unnamed souls, children who had not officially received a name, and performed a series of rituals over 3 years, they could create a single soul, an entity of immense spiritual power that would obey the Creator. The diary described how Father Grigory manipulated the Shevchenko families, using their superstition and religiosity. He deliberately chose families with the same surname, claiming that this would strengthen family protection. In fact, according to the beliefs of his cult, it created a stronger connection between the souls of the children. But the scariest thing was the description of what happened on the night of September 12, 1896. Olga wrote, "Today Maria Kovalchuk told me that she saw Father Grigory carrying infants into a dungeon under the church that was deeper than a normal basement. She followed him and saw a room with a stone altar. In the center, around the altar, stood 28 small cradles arranged in a circle. In each lay an infant. Father Grigory walked between them, dripping something from a vial onto their foreheads and whispering something. Maria wanted to intervene, but she couldn't move, as if an invisible force was holding her back. When Father Grigory finished going around all the children, he stood in the center of the circle and began to read from a strange book. According to him, the air above the altar began to thicken, forming something like a dark cloud. Then, from each child, a thin, glowing thread stretched towards this cloud. The entry broke off and continued. The next day, we all woke up to Maria Kovalchuk's screams. She was running through the streets, shouting that Father Grigory was stealing the souls of our children. All the mothers rushed to check on their infants and found that the children had disappeared from their cribs. We ran to the church. The doors were open, inside no one. We found a hatch in the floor leading to the dungeon Maria had spoken of. Going down, we saw the same stone altar and the cradles around it. In the cradles lay our children, all alive, but unnaturally quiet, with empty eyes, as if something important had disappeared from them. On the floor were strange symbols drawn in dark red. Father Grigory was nowhere to be found. Subsequent records told of what happened next. The parents took their children and turned to the authorities, but they were not believed. The governor, fearing a scandal, ordered the whole story to be hidden. Church authorities disclaimed Father Grigory, stating that they had no information about such a priest appointed to Kharkiv. The metrical book was confiscated and sealed by order of the governor. Most of the Shevchenko families left Kharkiv during the following year. Fearing the return of Father Grigory, they dispersed to different cities of the Russian Empire to protect their children. But according to Olga's diary, strange things happened to the children. They grew up physically healthy, but were emotionally detached, as if part of their personality was missing. And they all had the same characteristic. They could not say their name, even when their parents gave them new names after those events. The most disturbing records were made several years later, when the children began to draw the same symbols, the same ones that were drawn on the floor in the church basement. And at the age of 5, all of them, regardless of where they lived, began to tell the same strange stories about a man in black who comes to them in their dreams and says that soon they will become one. The last entry in the diary was dated August 26, 1901. Today my Anya turned 6 years old. During the night, I woke up to a strange sound and saw that she was standing by the window and talking to someone invisible. When I asked who she was talking to, Anya turned to me, and for a moment I didn't recognize her eyes. They were alien, adult, full of knowledge that a child shouldn't have. She said, "That man, he says that the time is almost here, 28 will become 1 when the full moon comes. Father Grigory is waiting for us in St. Petersburg." Then she blinked and her eyes became childish again. Frightened. She didn't remember what she had just said. I decided we must run further. Tomorrow we are leaving for Siberia, where he will not be able to find us. The diary ended there. Anna spent a sleepless night trying to make sense of what she had read. The story seemed incredible, like the plot of a Gothic novel, but the metrical book and the photograph were real, tangible evidence. Something definitely happened to those 28 children in Kharkiv at the end of the 19th century. The next day, Anna returned to Maria Shevchenko with new questions. "What happened to your grandmother and her daughter after the diary ends?" she asked. Maria looked out the window for a long time before answering. "They fled to Siberia as planned. They settled in a small village near Tomsk. Grandmother no longer kept a diary. She was afraid that the records might lead him to them. Anya grew up, got married, gave birth to my mother. Outwardly, she was normal, but grandmother said that at times something strange came over her. She could sit motionless for hours, staring at one point, or say strange things in a language that no one understood. And the other children? Do you know what happened to the rest of those 28? Anna asked. Not much, Maria replied. The families dispersed, lost contact with each other. But grandmother said that before Anya's death in 1960, something strange happened. Anya fell into a trance. When she woke up, she said that she had seen them all. They had gathered together, all 28, but one of them was resisting. The next day came news of the death of one of those children, Mikhail Shevchenko, who lived in Leningrad. He committed suicide, leaving a note. I will not become part of this. It is better to die my own death than to lose myself in him. Anna felt a chill run down her spine. Do you think that there really was some kind of connection between them, even decades after the rituals? I think Father Grigory achieved his goal, although not as he planned, Maria replied quietly. He linked their souls, but he could not complete the ritual to take them under control. They were linked to each other, but free from him. And what happened to Father Grigory? Anna asked. Was he ever found? Officially, no, Maria said. But the family passed down a story that in 1906, a strange incident occurred in St. Petersburg. A priest was found dead in one of the Orthodox churches, with an expression of horror on his face and strange symbols carved on his forehead. Next to the body was found a note written in handwriting similar to a child's. 28 came for the one who wanted to become their master. Maria fell silent and then added, but, of course, this may just be a legend invented for comfort, a way to believe that justice triumphed. After talking to Maria, Anna plunged into archival searches, trying to track the fates of all 28 children. It turned out to be an extremely difficult task. Many traces were lost in the whirlwind of revolutions, wars, and migrations of the 20th century. However, she managed to find information about 12 of them. Surprisingly, all of them, despite their different life paths, died within 1 year, from 1959 to 1960. And one more detail caught Anna's attention. Although these people lived in different cities of the USSR and even abroad, all of them in their last years showed an interest in occultism and religious philosophy. 3 became priests, 2 famous mediums, and the rest were somehow connected with the study of paranormal phenomena. Of particular interest was the case of Nikolai Shevchenko, who became a well-known Soviet psychiatrist. In 1958, he published an article in a professional journal on the phenomenon of multiple consciousness, where he described cases where several people could experience the same dreams, emotions, and even physical sensations simultaneously while being at a great distance from each other. The article was criticized as unscientific, and shortly thereafter Nikolai Shevchenko was found dead in his office. The official cause of death, a heart attack, but his assistant, in a private conversation with a journalist, said that at the moment of death Nikolai uttered a strange phrase. "They, all of them are here. The circle is closed." Anna devoted months to this investigation, gradually collecting fragments of the story. One of the most chilling episodes she found in the KGB archives, recently declassified and transferred to the Historical Museum. In a folder dated 1960 was a report of a strange incident in Leningrad. According to the document, on the night of March 21st to 22nd, 1960, at the full moon in different parts of the city, 11 elderly people left their homes and headed towards an abandoned church on the outskirts. All of them were born between 1893 and 1896 in Kharkiv. State security officers monitoring one of these people on suspicion of anti-Soviet activities reported extremely unusual behavior by the group. Gathering in the dilapidated church, they stood in a circle and began to speak simultaneously, as if with one voice, in a language that the agents could not identify. Then, according to the report, a dark cloud began to form in the center of the circle, taking on a human-like shape. At that moment, one of the participants in the group suddenly broke the circle and rushed to run. The others tried to stop him, but a scuffle broke out, during which the dilapidated ceiling of the church began to collapse. All those present died under the rubble. The report noted that upon examination of the bodies, all the deceased had a strange symbol. On the wrist of their left hand, a small scar in the shape of an inverted letter Sh. The one who fled turned out to be Mikhail Shevchenko, the same one Maria had mentioned. The day after the incident, he committed suicide. "This cannot be a coincidence," Anna told Maria at their next meeting. Full moon on March 21st, 1960, strange gathering, symbols. Everything indicates that the ritual started by Father Grigory had some continuation, even decades later. Grandmother warned that it wouldn't end with the death of Father Grigory. Maria nodded. She said that some rituals live their own lives, especially if they are connected with souls. Father Grigory may have died, but what he started continued to exist, linking all these people. But what happened to the rest? Anna asked. If 11 were in Leningrad, where were the other 17? Not all of them could have made it. Some may have resisted the call, like Mikhail. Others may have died earlier from natural causes. But what is really important is what happened to the entity they were trying to create or summon. This question haunted Anna. She continued her searches, turning to archives, libraries, and specialists in occult practices. One of the experts, Professor of Religious Studies Igor Vasilyev, suggested a theory that made Anna's blood run cold. What you are describing is similar to the ritual of creating an egregore, the professor explained. In occult practices, an egregore is a non-material entity created by the collective thoughts, emotions, and intentions of a group of people. Usually, egregores are formed naturally around religious groups, philosophical schools, or even fans of some idea, but there are techniques for deliberately creating an egregore through certain rituals. And what happens to such an egregore after the death of the people who created it? Anna asked. Theoretically, if the egregore is strong enough, it can exist independently, the professor replied. Moreover, it can influence physical reality and even seek new carriers or conductors, especially if the egregore was created from the energy of souls, as in your case. Such an entity will strive to find new carriers to continue its existence. New carriers, Anna repeated thoughtfully. For example, the descendants of those 28 children? Quite possibly, the professor nodded. Especially if they are blood relatives. Blood is often seen as a conductor of spiritual energy in occult practices. This idea made Anna return to Maria with new questions. But when she arrived at the elderly woman's house, she found police cars and an ambulance. A neighbor reported that Maria had died the previous night, presumably from a heart attack. She looked strange in recent days, the neighbor said. She kept talking about some voices calling her. Last night I went to see her and she seemed very excited. She said that he was returning and that the circle must be broken before it was too late. Anna felt a chill run down her spine. Maria's death right now, when the investigation was nearing some conclusions, seemed too suspicious. Returning home, she found that the door of her apartment was slightly ajar, although she distinctly remembered locking it. Inside, everything looked untouched, but on her desk, on top of the documents on the Shevchenko case, lay an old, faded photograph that had not been there before. The photograph showed a group of children standing in a circle, holding hands. All of them were dressed in identical white shirts. Their faces were blurred, as if they were moving at the time of the filming. And in the center of the circle stood a dark figure of an adult, whose face was completely blurred, indistinguishable. On the back of the photograph was an inscription in faded ink. 28, and he, St. Petersburg, 1907. Anna was sure that she had never seen this photograph before and had no idea how it ended up in her apartment. The only explanation was that someone had broken into her home and left the picture. But why? Was it a warning or a clue? Examining the photograph under a magnifying glass, Anna noticed that in the background she could see the facade of a building in which she recognized the Peter and Paul Cathedral of St. Petersburg. The date on the photograph, 1907, contradicted the story of Father Grigory's death in 1906. If the dark figure in the center of the circle was him, then he did not die, as the Shevchenko family legend claimed. Anna spent the next few days in frantic searches. She contacted the archives of St. Petersburg, requested information about Orthodox priests serving in the city at the beginning of the 20th century, studied old newspapers and magazines of that period, and gradually a new story began to take shape. An even more troubling picture emerges. In St. Petersburg, from 1906 to 1908, a series of strange incidents indeed occurred. Bodies were found in different parts of the city with identical wounds. Small cuts on the wrists, shaped like an inverted letter, Shah. All the victims were people somehow connected with the church. Priests, monks, theologians. And in 1907, a strange incident took place in one of the temples. During a service, a group of children entered the crowd of parishioners and began to speak simultaneously in the same words, but in an incomprehensible language. Witnesses described it as a terrifying chorus of children's voices sounding as one. The most interesting thing is that around the same time, a new religious figure appeared in St. Petersburg, a certain Father Georgi, who founded a small but influential sect. No photographs of Father Georgi have been found, but the description of his appearance was strikingly reminiscent of Father Grigory Vasnetsov. Thin, with deep-set eyes and thin lips, Father Georgi's sect practiced unusual rituals involving the unification of souls and the creation of a higher being from many. By 1910, the sect disappeared as suddenly as it had appeared, and Father Georgi himself, according to limited sources, departed to the east to study ancient practices. Anna understood that she had stumbled upon the trail of something significantly larger than she had initially assumed. The story did not end in Kharkiv in 1896. It continued in St. Petersburg and possibly went further through the entire 20th century. In the archive of the Leningrad KGB Directorate, she found mention of an investigation into the activities of a certain occult group in 1958. The group called themselves Children of the One and consisted primarily of elderly people, many of whom were born in Kharkiv or had roots there. According to the report, the group held regular meetings at which participants entered a trance, becoming part of a single being. The investigation was interrupted after most of the group members died under strange circumstances in 1960. "These are the same people," Anna murmured, reading the names in the list of group members. The survivors from the 28 Shevchenko children. But what happened to the single being after the death of its creators? This question haunted Anna. If Professor Vasiliev's theory about egregores is to be believed, such an entity would have to seek new hosts. Anna began searching for the descendants of all 28 Shevchenko families. This proved to be an extremely difficult task. Many traces were lost in the whirlwind of historical events of the 20th century, but gradually she compiled a list of 16 people living now in various cities in Russia, Ukraine, and even several European countries. All of them were direct descendants of those same nameless children. Anna decided to contact each of them to find out if anything unusual was happening to them. She sent out emails and messages on social networks, introducing herself as a researcher of the genealogy of the Shevchenko families. The answers she received made her blood run cold. 9 people out of 16 reported that in recent months they had been experiencing strange symptoms. Inexplicable headaches, vivid dreams in which they saw unfamiliar people performing some kind of ritual, and sudden attacks during which they uncontrollably wrote or drew strange symbols, the very same ones that were described in Olga's diary. One of the descendants, Sergei Shevchenko from Kiev, sent a photograph of a symbol that he had involuntarily drawn during one of these attacks. Anna compared it with the symbols from Olga's diary. They were identical, but even more alarmingly, Sergei reported that all these symptoms began about 6 months ago, around the same time that Anna discovered the sealed cabinet with the metric book. "It's as if something awakened from a long sleep," Sergei wrote. "Every night I see the same dream. An old priest stands in the center of a circle of children and says, 'The time has come, the circle will soon be closed.'" Another descendant, Elena Shevchenko from St. Petersburg, told an even more disturbing story. Her 6-year-old daughter had recently begun to speak in her sleep in a strange language. When Elena recorded these conversations and showed them to a linguist, he could not identify the language, but noted that it contained elements of ancient Church Slavonic and some Eastern dialects. And one day the girl drew a strange symbol and said, "Grandfather in black said that we all have to draw this, and then he will be able to return." The more information Anna collected, the clearer it became that the story of Father Grigory and the 28 nameless children did not end in the past. Something was happening right now, in the present, and somehow her own investigation had become a catalyst for these events. Anna returned to Olga Shevchenko's diary, rereading it again and again in search of clues. In one of the entries, Olga mentioned that Father Grigory spoke of a cycle of rebirth that would come when the book was opened again. Could the opening of the sealed metric book be the trigger that the priest spoke about? To test this theory, Anna decided to show the metric book to a specialist in ancient manuscripts and occult symbols, Professor Mikhail Kravtsov. When the professor examined the book, his face became serious. "These symbols on the margins of the pages," he said, pointing to barely noticeable signs drawn along the edge of each birth record of a nameless child. "They form a spell stretched over several pages. This is an ancient technique known as a key book. When such a book is opened and read, the symbols are activated, creating a kind of magical resonance." "And what does this spell do?" Anna asked. "Judging by these symbols, it is designed to create a channel between worlds through which can return that which was banished or locked away," the professor explained. In occult practices, such spells were used to return spirits or entities that were removed from our world. "So, by opening the book, I could have released something?" Anna felt her heart clench with horror. "Quite possibly," the professor nodded. "Especially if this entity was already looking for a way back and was just waiting for the right moment. The spell in the book could have become the key that opened the door." After meeting with the professor, Anna felt a strong need to meet with the descendants of the Shevchenko children in person. She organized a meeting in Moscow, where 5 people from her list agreed to come. The meeting was scheduled for March 20th, the day before the vernal equinox. On the evening before the meeting, Anna suddenly woke up from a strange sound in her hotel room. A dark figure stood by the window, its contours blurred and indistinct, as if it were made of thick smoke. Anna tried to scream, but found that she could not make a sound. "Thank you, Seeker," said a deep, vibrating voice that seemed to sound directly in her head. "You have played your part perfectly. Tomorrow, when the descendants gather together, the circle will finally close." The figure began to approach the bed, and Anna saw with horror that under the smoky hood was a face similar to the one she had seen in the old photograph. the face of Father Grigory Vasnetsev, but distorted, inhuman, with eyes glowing with a dull red light. "I have been waiting for this moment for more than a century," the voice continued. 28 souls gathered together, freed from names and merged into one. But I did not have enough time to complete the ritual. Now, thanks to you, I will be able to finish what I started. Their descendants carry within them particles of those souls, and tomorrow I will collect them all. The figure reached out to Anna's face, and she felt an icy touch. At that moment, she found the strength to scream and sat up sharply in bed, finding the room empty. Was it a dream or a real apparition? With trembling hands, Anna dialed Professor Kravtsov's number. "They are in danger," she said as soon as he answered. "The Shevchenko descendants, someone is going to use them for some kind of ritual. I think it's connected with that entity that Father Grigory created." "Where are you now?" the professor asked. "In Moscow. The meeting is scheduled for tomorrow." "Cancel it," the professor said firmly. "Immediately, and come to me. I found something in the old texts about similar rituals. There is a way to stop it, but we must act quickly." Anna tried to contact all the participants in the meeting, but the phones of 4 out of 5 did not answer. The only one who answered, Alexei Shevchenko, reported strange news. "I'm already on my way, but not to Moscow. I'm drawn to another place. I can't resist this call." "Where are we all going?" Anna asked desperately. "To Kharkiv," Alexei replied. "To that very church where it all began. It's still standing, although it's abandoned. Something is calling us there. A voice in my head that is getting louder every day." Anna realized that she had no choice. She had to go to Kharkiv to try to stop what she had started without knowing it. On the way to the airport, she called Professor Kravtsov and explained the situation. "Listen carefully," the professor said. "What you have encountered is an ancient ritual for creating a composite entity, a being formed from many souls. Father Grigory began this process but could not complete it, possibly due to the resistance of the children themselves. Now the entity is trying to complete its formation using the descendants of those children." "How can I stop it?" Anna asked. "The ritual must be performed in a special place, where it was started," the professor explained, "and at a special time, usually on the days of the equinox or solstice, when the boundary between worlds is thinner. Tomorrow is the vernal equinox. To stop the ritual, you must break the circle of participants before the entity fully materializes." "But how?" Anna asked in despair. "I have one idea," the professor said after a pause. "According to old texts, such entities are afraid of names. That is why Father Grigory left the children nameless, so that their souls would be more malleable. If you can give a name to the entity or to all the participants in the ritual, it could break the connection." "Give a name," Anna repeated thoughtfully. "The metric book, there are 28 birth records without names. If I can fill in those blanks, write in the names, it might work." "Yes," agreed the professor, "but be careful. The entity will resist and try to stop you." Arriving in Kharkiv late in the evening, Anna immediately went to the abandoned Svyatopokrovskaya church. The church building was preserved, although it was in a deplorable state. A collapsed roof, broken windows, walls covered in graffiti. But even in this form, it exuded a strange, disturbing aura. As Anna approached the church, she saw several cars parked nearby. "So, the Shevchenko descendants are already here?" Carefully entering inside through the dilapidated portal, she saw a group of people standing in a circle in the center of the former nave. There were 15 of them, not 28, but still quite a few. They stood motionless, with their eyes closed, holding hands and monotonously repeating something in an unfamiliar language. In the center of the circle, a dark cloud was slowly forming, gradually taking on a humanoid form. Anna recognized with horror in this silhouette the outline of Father Grigory Vasnetsev, as she had seen him in the old photograph. Anna had with her the metric book, which she had taken from the library before leaving for Moscow. She knew that she had to fill in the blanks, write the names in the birth records. But how to do it when there was almost no time left? Suddenly, she remembered Maria Shevchenko's words that the children could not pronounce their names. even when their parents gave them new names after those events. This meant that the parents did name their children after all. The names existed, they just weren't recorded in official documents. Anna looked around at the participants in the ritual and noticed an antique medallion on the neck of one of them. She recognized it from a photograph. Such medallions were often given to children at baptism at the end of the 19th century. Usually, the child's name and date of baptism were engraved inside. This was a chance. Anna rushed to the person with the medallion, grabbed it, and opened it. Inside was the engraving Nikolai, son of Ivan and Maria Shevchenko, baptized January 20th, 1893. Nikolai, Anna cried, looking into the face of the man who was a descendant of this child. Your ancestor, Nikolai Shevchenko. The man flinched as if struck. His eyes widened, and he released the hands of his neighbors in the circle. The breaking of the circle caused visible agitation in the dark cloud. It wavered, its form became less defined. No, a deep, inhuman voice boomed from the center of the cloud. The circle must remain closed. Anna realized that she was on the right track. She quickly opened the metric book to the first record of a nameless child and wrote the name Nikolai in the empty space with her pen. As soon as the ink touched the paper, one of the participants in the circle screamed and fell to his knees, as if freeing himself from invisible shackles. Stop her! The voice thundered, and several participants in the ritual moved towards Anna with empty, lifeless eyes. Anna retreated frantically, leafing through the book. She didn't know the names of the other children, but she knew that she had to continue breaking the circle. She shouted the name Maria and wrote it in the second record. Another participant flinched and came out of her trance. No, the voice roared, and the dark cloud began to spread throughout the room, filling it with a thick, suffocating fog. They are mine. Their souls have belonged to me for more than a century. Anna continued to retreat, writing random names in the empty spaces in the book. Alexander, Ekaterina, Pyotr, Anna. With each new name, another participant in the ritual was freed from control, and the dark cloud became less and less stable. Its form distorted and wavered. You don't understand what you're doing, boomed the voice. I am the only one who can give them immortality. Through me, they will live forever. They must rest in peace, Anna shouted in response, continuing to write names. What you have created is not life, but a parody of it. When she wrote the 25th name, there were only 3 participants left in the trance. The dark cloud was now rushing erratically around the room. Its form was falling apart, but it was still dangerous. One of the freed participants tried to approach it and was thrown back by an invisible force. You must leave the church, Anna shouted to the others. Get out of here faster. Most obeyed and began to make their way to the exit. But when Anna wrote the penultimate name, something unexpected happened. The dark cloud suddenly rushed towards the last participant in the ritual, enveloping him completely. When the fog cleared, Anna stood before a man with eyes glowing with the same dull red light that she had seen in her dream. You think you've won? He said in a voice that simultaneously contained human intonations and the inhuman roar of the entity. I only need one vessel to stay in this world, and then I will find the others. The man-vessel moved towards Anna with unnatural speed. She jumped aside, but stumbled on a stone and fell, dropping the book. The metric book opened to the last page, where the old photograph of the priest and the infants was glued. The man-vessel hung over her, his hands turned into claw-like appendages. At the last moment, she grabbed the photograph and cried out, Grigory Vasnetsov, I call you by your true name. The man froze as if struck by an electric shock. His eyes widened, his mouth opened in a silent scream. Then black smoke began to come out of his body, forming above him a semblance of a human figure, much clearer than before. It was Father Grigory, but his face was distorted by anger and fear. My name has no power over me, he hissed. I gave it up when I began the ritual. Anna thought frantically, if his real name doesn't work, what can stop him? And then she remembered Maria's words that Father Grigory had told the mothers. A name gives a child destiny, And if you leave a child nameless, then evil spirits will not be able to find his soul. You yourself are nameless. Anna suddenly realized. You gave up your name to become who you are now. But if you have no name, you don't exist in this world. Anna grabbed the book and quickly turned it to the last blank page, where there should have been records of the next births, and she resolutely wrote, "An entity created from the souls of 28 nameless children was born. In the name of archivist Anna Sokolova, I name it nameless and release it forever." As soon as the last word was written, there was a deafening howl, resembling both a cry of pain and the howling of the wind in an empty building. The figure of Father Grigory began to disintegrate, turning into shreds of black smoke that gradually dissipated into the air. "This is impossible," whispered the voice, becoming quieter and quieter. "I cannot be both named and nameless at the same time." The last words dissolved along with the last remnants of the dark cloud. The person who served as the vessel fell to the floor unconscious, but his chest rose and fell evenly. He was alive. Silence reigned in the church, broken only by Anna's heavy breathing and the groans of the ritual participants regaining consciousness. It was over. The being created by Father Grigory more than a century ago had finally disappeared, named and released at the same time. A month later, Anna sat in her office in the library, finishing a report on the documents found in the walled-up room. The official version of events was dry and formal. A metric book from the end of the 19th century was discovered with unusual records requiring further historical research. Not a word about entities, rituals, and descendants. But Anna knew the truth, and 15 other people who were present that night in the abandoned church knew it too. All of them agreed to remain silent, partly because no one would believe them, partly because they themselves wanted to forget the nightmare they had experienced. Anna maintained contact with some of them. They all reported the same thing. The strange dreams had stopped, the involuntary attacks no longer recurred, and the symbols that they had previously drawn involuntarily had lost all meaning. Now they were just strange squiggles devoid of power. The metric book of the Shevchenko families was officially catalogued and placed in a special storage facility in the library. Anna insisted that access to it be restricted, explaining this by the fragility of the document. The last page on which she wrote the name of the entity was carefully pasted over with a blank sheet, a small falsification that she considered a necessary precaution. Sometimes, sitting in the silence of the library late in the evening, Anna wondered about how many more such stories were hidden in archives and sealed rooms. How many more secrets were waiting for their hour to be revealed or to remain buried forever? Were there other entities created like the one she had encountered? Were there other cults and rituals, the results of which still influenced our world? These thoughts disturbed her, but she learned to live with them. In the end, knowledge is both a blessing and a curse at the same time. As one of the Shevchenko descendants told her after those events, "Some secrets are best left buried, but if they do come to light, you must have the courage to face them head-on." One day, sorting through her notes on the Shevchenko case, which she kept at home, Anna discovered a strange detail that she had not noticed before, on the back of the very photograph that someone had left in her apartment. 28 and he, St. Petersburg, 1907. There was a barely noticeable continuation of the inscription made in different ink and in a different handwriting. The first attempt failed, but there will be others. The circle is eternal. Anna stared at this inscription for a long time, feeling a chill run down her spine. Then she resolutely took matches and burned the photograph, watching as the flame devoured the last reminder of the being she had helped to lay to rest. When only ashes remained of the photograph, she opened the window and allowed the wind to carry them away. "Some circles must be broken," she whispered, "and some stories must have an end." But even as she said this, somewhere deep inside a doubt lingered. Had the story really ended? Or somewhere in another city, in another old building, in another sealed room, was another book waiting for its hour, another ritual, another secret? That night, Anna had a dream. She stood in a spacious hall of an old library, surrounded by endless rows of bookshelves stretching into the distance further than the eye could see. Before her on the table lay 28 books with absolutely identical covers, and a voice, quiet but distinct, whispered to her, Every soul is a book. Every book is a soul. The reader becomes part of what is read. The circle is never completely broken. She woke up with a pounding heart and a feeling that something had changed in the world. Something elusive but important. As if one story had ended, but another was perhaps just beginning. But that is a completely different story.